This week on Three Questions with Corey Kareem.
So let's take the scenario where, because you just brought this up in your example, if you're making more money than him, let's take the scenario where you make, let's say, $500,000 a year, and he makes 70. Is that a deal breaker? Is that it?
To me, the question would be, does he check off the list?
Let's say he checked off almost 90% of your boxes, but the financial part, he only made $70,000 a year.
That can be fixed.
Clockwise, 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 clockwise. Never turn back. Only go clockwise. Never go back. Only go.
Now, before we get started with this beautiful conversation, please help a brother out and click on that follow button on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the conversation.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Three Questions with Corey Kareem, the podcast where we sit down with some amazing people who are doing some amazing things. And that's right. You guessed it. We ask them 3 questions, sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I know. I read the comments. But rather than just talk about their wins and their successes, we tend to start the conversation around their failures, more specifically, the lessons that they learn from those individual experiences. So, with that being said, my guest today is a financial planner and is the creative mind behind LegacyCon, which is an annual experiential event about generational wealth. Hailing from the vibrant city of Los Angeles, LA, her journey is a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and the transformative impact of financial literacy. Venturing into the world of real estate 6 years ago, she quickly rose to prominence as a top producer on the #1 team at Compass in West Hollywood. Not content with just one area of expertise, she also obtained her license as a life insurance broker, further expanding her knowledge and skills in the financial services realm. Today, she has dedicated herself to giving back to her community on a full-time basis. Through her work, she educates and guides individuals on how to establish and achieve long-term financial goals, create generational wealth, and leave a lasting legacy for future generations. So, without further ado, Tiffani with an I at the end, Herron, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Corey, for having me. I'm so glad to be here. I must say that's the best introduction I've had thus far.
Well, I take that as a compliment, but I have to give ChatGPT a little bit of credit there. I had Chat, remix a little bit of what I wrote, and then I kind of did the final cut. So shout out to ChatGPT. I can't take 100% credit there, but thank you though. I'll take the flower.
Of course. Yeah, shout out to the GPT. I think AI is definitely a great tool.
Awesome. Now, Tiffani, I know I gave you quite a bit of an intro, but is there anything that I missed from what you've done and what you're doing and what you're about that you'd like to add, or did I kind of capture everything there?
I believe you captured everything, from where I am and who I am currently to where I was. I think we'll get into a little bit of a deeper side so the audience can get to know a little bit more about me. But as a synopsis, I think that was a great all-around overview.
Awesome. All right. So, Tiffani, as I kind of mentioned in my introduction, I try to start these conversations around kind of failures, setbacks, mishaps, however you want to describe that. So, if you can tell me and share with my audience, my listeners, about one of your biggest failures or setbacks, or maybe it's the most memorable one, what happened? How did you, work through it? And then most importantly, what did you learn from it?
Wow. Okay. So my biggest setback would and is still to this day the passing of my sister's death.
Mm.
So that was back in 2015. And the reason why it's the most memorable for me is because my sister, of course, she's my best friend, and not everyone can relate to this. Some people can relate to having, the closest person to them passing away. But for me, it was definitely a big shock to my life. I'm the youngest of three. And so when she passed, I really didn't have a reaction or a response up until the day of her funeral, which was 2 months later. But what it taught me was that I can go through anything, that I am resilient, that I'm strong. And I gathered a certain amount of strength at the age of 18 to be able to uphold my entire family during that time. And of course, the downside of that too is that when you're holding up everyone else, who's there to hold you? So I would cry myself to sleep at night on some nights. And then when I'm seen in the public eye, with family and friends, I'm smiling and I'm happy and I'm joyful. But it definitely was a tough time that I got to get through, and it was a blessing in disguise because it really added to the strength that I have today and who I am today.
Wow. And you touched on something there, and the word, or the phrase rather, social veneer came on. So you talked about, to the public, you put a smile on your face, you went about your business like everything was normal, but you'd essentially kind of cry yourself to sleep. So I know that you mentioned that you learned how kind of tough you were, but if you were to give advice to someone who's going through a similar situation, maybe not as severe, what kind of advice or tips would you give to that particular individual?
Absolutely. My advice and my tip would be to take it one day at a time. It may not be as severe as a passing, but going through that, I learned that a passing could be the worst thing that could happen in this day and age. If nobody passed away, if I didn't pass away, then I'm still good. You're still good. So take it one day at a time, and receive support any way that you can. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable and to speak to someone that you trust. It could be someone you know, or perhaps you hired on a therapist, or whatever the case may be. But take it one day at a time, and also trust the process. Know that what you are going through, it will come to pass, and that you get to trust the process in what you're going through, and understand and know and have confidence that there is going to be something beautiful on the other side.
I love that. And I think, part of that phrase, trust the process, I know that's a phraseology that's used a lot. And I think one thing I can say from my own experience is that process might look different for everyone. When my grandmother passed, last September, I think I had like a delayed grieving effect. Like I didn't grieve right away. And I think that's more so the way that she kind of passed. She was ill for almost 8 years, if not even longer than that. So when you're seeing somebody deteriorate over a period of time, I think it's a different kind of impact versus if it's, tragic. At least that was my experience. But my kind of take on that is, for everybody out there, for anybody, I should say, that's kind of dealing with that, just know that your grieving process might look different from someone else's, and not to compare, your style of grieving, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And sometimes it may not be that we're grieving someone else, but also grieving our old self. And I'm sorry, my condolences to your grandmother's passing. But there are times where we grieve our old selves, when it's right before we're about to get to a new level, or to see something new in our life. We have to basically create an identity switch. And it doesn't mean that you're being a fake person, but just that you're becoming a new person, and then we grieve our old self. And that is a process within itself too. It's not overnight.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that. I know, death is not something easy for a lot of people to talk to, but I'm glad that it kind of inspired you. And from reading your bio, it kind of inspired you to take on this challenge of building financial wealth and generational wealth, to be specific. So the question I have is, what do you say to those who may view this focus on wealth accumulation as, materialistic or self-serving? How would you respond to someone that's coming from that kind of POV or angle, if you will?
Wealth accumulation is absolutely self-serving in a great way. In a great way. If you don't serve yourself first, how can you help anybody?
Mm-hmm.
It's like as soon as when you get, when you get on the airplane, they say if the oxygen masks come down, you must put your oxygen mask on first before you can help anyone else. It's the same. It's the same way with your money. In order for you to be able to help your family, your kids, anybody who's dependent upon you, or if you have no dependents and you say, I really want to help the community, you can't do that without building yourself up first. And the wealth part is a part of that. Now, wealth means different things. We're talking financially, but also emotionally, as well as spiritually and mentally. So to be able to build yourself up first and accumulate that wealth in those areas, then you have to be self-serving and also selfish, not self-absorbed, but selfish, just basically creating that time for yourself and that structure for yourself in order to do so. So, I mean, I agree. It's self-serving. Now, can everybody do it? Yes. It's not just for people who are making a lot of money. And I think we were going to get into that, but everyone can accumulate wealth at any point in time.
I love that. Now, this is a kind of a sidebar question. My mind went completely somewhere different because I had this conversation with other folks and we're talking about, so you mentioned, kind of like there's different levels of success or different kinds of financial, or I think you said something on levels about spirituality or something like that nature, right? I had this conversation with a bunch of my guys about, can a pastor be rich, right? Should he be rich? So I'm just curious from your POV. I know this is kind of like a curveball question here, but I would love to know from a financial planner standpoint, do you think it's odd if a leader of a church or any kind of spiritual faith-based congregation, whether it be, Islam or Christianity or what have you faith, is it odd if the leader of that place of worship is wealthy or rich or anything along those lines?
I definitely think it's odd if he or she is not building up his congregation and the people of his church to be at the same level that he or she is at. So if that person is in a constant state of consumption, with tithes or whatever the case may be, they out here driving a Lamborghini, a G-Wagon, but the people in their congregation are still poor mentally, financially, spiritually, and emotionally, then absolutely they are in the wrong. And it definitely is odd. But they know what they're doing. And I am a person of faith and a person of God, and I know that God sees and hears and knows all things.
Right.
So whatever it is that they're doing, they're not getting away with it. Now, if they are rich and or wealthy and are teaching their congregation, applying applicable knowledge to them or ways for them to be able to build up their finances and not just in a constant state of consumption, then they're doing right. They're doing right.
I love that response because I do feel like there are people that are doing that, but then you have the people that are, raising money for a private jet so they can get between two congregations on an opposite coast. Or
it's
whatever.
crazy.
I'm like, what? How did you go to sleep and thought that was a great thing to say? But anyways, I digress on that point. But yeah, so the other thing I wanted to ask you about is some critics may also argue that financial planning is a luxury reserved for wealthy or maybe upper middle class or what have you. With that in mind, what's your take on the accessibility of financial planning for individuals on all income levels, but more so specifically for people that are of lower income levels?
Yes, absolutely. So financial planning, so my team and I, we help anyone anywhere in between, from if you are just getting started to paying off student loans, clearing out debt, to saving for a big purchase, to pre-retirement and also in retirement. So basically everyone anywhere in between. So that means that every single person can absolutely receive financial planning and go over what does risk management look like in their life? What does wealth accumulation look like for them? And also how to protect, preserve, and distribute that. So financial planning and wealth accumulation shouldn't just be reserved for those who make a lot of money. And you don't necessarily have to make millions in order to talk to someone like myself or my team or anyone else out there. And really what it is assessing your current financial situation and also your goals and where you want to be. And then now we take that and we put it into perspective and say, okay, here are some of the things that I recommend that you should implement. You either implement it or you don't. It's information at that point, but it's either you're going to stay in your current situation or you're going to, take these recommendations and implementations to get to wherever you want to go. So absolutely anyone and everyone can and should utilize financial planning.
So you're saying if I make $10 an hour, you can create a plan for me. That's my
Absolutely. Now, where it boils down to, which is why some people think that they have to be millionaires to talk to a financial planner, is because you have some financial planners and wealth advisors who are niched down to only working with lawyers and doctors, or they won't take on any clients who make less than 500, $500,000 a year. That's where you get to have discernment. But absolutely, if you're making $10 an hour and you want to be making something else, or you want to protect yourself, your income over time, then you absolutely can use financial planning. Because the truth of the matter is, even though you're making $10 an hour, 2, 3, 5 years from now, naturally your income is going to increase. And that's for every person.
Got you. So on that topic, in the realm of financial planning, there's often conflicting opinions, strategies for achieving long-term financial goals. So, based on your expertise, right? Because this is your line of business, what are some common misconceptions out there? And then what are some, simple to do hacks that a person can use right now, like right today?
Absolutely. So two common misconceptions. The first one is what we just talked about, that you have to be a millionaire or a billionaire in order to get some financial advice or planning. The second thing is that you should wait to start when you begin making more money to then assess your situation and implement some sort of plan. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is, I think it's the head trash that we create around planning itself. And when I say we, I just mean most of us who kind of have a misconception of, well, I need to save more money first, or, before I can talk to someone, or they're going to judge my financial situation. It's an embarrassment. Mm-hmm. It's just head trash. So
see, I like the way you kind of simplified it, but all right, let's dig deep a little here. I think for a man specifically, and we're gonna talk about relationships in a little bit, but I think for a man specifically, the earning part is such a burden on us, because you are taught, like, you are judged essentially on your ability to protect and provide. And so, if we're using that scenario as that individual that makes $10 an hour, do you know how, like, I can only imagine as a grown person, we're not talking like a kid in high school out here that has a high school job. We're talking like as a grown adult, maybe someone broaching 30s, or maybe they're well into their 30s, making $10 an hour, how uncomfortable that must feel. And I'm just thinking, for that particular person, for them to feel, like they can trust somebody, I feel like it's like a huge step. Because I don't know if you're doing therapy, Tiffani, but like, when you find your therapist, it's kind of like dating in the beginning. You got to find someone that you feel comfortable enough to really spill all the stuff that you need to spill in order to, fix the issues. So I kind of see finding a financial planner kind of the same way. But if I'm that person, $10 an hour, and I'm feeling, some type of way, what would you say to me right now? Like, what kind of things would you be saying to me?
Yeah. Well, sometimes the answer is simply making more income. And I think from that perspective, that is when I would step down from just the title of being a planner and really just get back to the human level, like one-on-one. What is the problem right now, or what's the issue right now with the earning or the income potential? And it could be that, perhaps it was just a job that you needed and you got it immediately. But now, how can we talk about what your gifts and your strengths are, so that you can open up your earning potential, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, what is your philosophy around money? Because the amount of money that you're making, it is in direct correlation and alignment to your value of yourself and your sense of worthiness. Money is simply energy. And it's all about the value that you are creating in the marketplace, but also how you see yourself as. So it's not, the fact that you can't earn more. What it really boils down to is the mindset and the philosophy around money, and then also, worthiness and value and how you can create additional income in your life. So we would assess that first. At least I would.
Got you. And so what are some personal hacks? If I'm that guy that's $10 an hour, what are some things I can do right now to start, accumulating wealth? What are some hacks you can give me?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to first things first, how can we bring in more income? What are you good at? What does everyone tell you that you're great at? And what do you know that you're great at? And how can you transfer that into a money-making activity? That's the first thing. The second thing is, I would say, begin investing in yourself. So when we have a little bit of money, I think that's always the best time to invest in ourselves. It's the best time to read up on books, whether you like physical books and personal development or listening to audiobooks, and also going to conferences, being around other individuals who perhaps were in your position before, or actually, I think all of us were in we had a starting point somewhere before.
Of course.
But putting yourself in new environments where now you're exposed to people who are making the type of income that you want to earn, and gaining a new mindset around money, a new mindset around business, just overall. So investing in self is going to be your hack. It's the quickest way to earn more income. And the second thing is, what are you good at? What do people tell you that you're great at? And what are some of the things that you learn to do? Those are the top two right there.
I love that, because I'm a strong believer that 60% of luck, I just came up with an arbitrary percentage. Don't ask me to that, right? 60% of luck is just being in the right environment. And so when you talk about attending events like maybe it's Legacy Con or what have you, or any type of conference where you're around individuals that have achieved some level of success, I believe in the power of osmosis. I believe like there's an energy. You talked about money is just energy. I believe that you catch some of that, whether it's just enthusiasm. Because I don't know if you actually use this word, but you alluded to mindset, right? It's how you think about your situation, how you think about how you can make money. And I think if you're in those type of environments or you're around those type of people, a lot of that, or maybe a little bit of it, is going to start to trickle down into your mindset. And then you're going to start making certain little adjustments. And over time, that will accumulate into a bigger, maybe bank account, a portfolio, what have you.
Absolutely, 1000%. And when I first started my own journey of personal development and entrepreneurship, one of the things that I would tell myself is, I'm always one conversation away from my life changing.
I like that.
Or one piece of information away from my life changing.
Right.
And, you could go to many conferences, masterminds. After you go to a couple, you start to realize that some of the information is the same, but there may be at least one piece of information that might be new to you, or one new person that you might have a new conversation with that really could be life-changing. So, you just never know.
Right. So it was on that, everyone's one conversation away. Was there a conversation that like flipped it for you, or what was that thing that kind of flipped it for you, that took you to the next level?
I wouldn't say it was one conversation that flipped it for me, but many conversations that were incremental. So whether that would have been, and I always upgrade my mentors. That's another thing too. So once you've reached a certain, like, a mentor can only get you to a certain level, or a coach. They can only get you to a certain level. For example, if you have a mentor or coach in your beginning stage of your business, that person can only get you past the beginning stage. Okay, but for this next level, I get to get a new mentor or a new coach, because otherwise I'm going to stay at the same level. So I would not say that I've had one conversation that really flipped the switch for me, but more so incremental conversations, whether that would have been a conversation about starting a new real estate business partnership, a conversation around real estate investing. And then once I would like be in those conversations, it would be like little doors opening one by one, one by one, one by one. That got me to this level that I'm at. And the real big shift that I always just love to rave about is this emotional intelligence training that I had went to, which really allowed me to then create a huge transformation.
I love that. Have you ever heard of Landmark by any chance?
I've heard of Landmark. I know two people that went to my training. They went to Landmark, and then
Okay.
yeah.
I think you would dig it. I'm not gonna tell you to do it, but I think you would dig it. So I did the Landmark Forum, and I'm gonna be very vulnerable here for a second. This is like 2014, 2015. I wasn't financially in the greatest place. I wasn't in a bad place, but I would say I wasn't a great place. And I kind of developed this fear of talking to really successful Caucasian people. It's very specific. I don't know where it came from, but it was a block I had. So I've been hearing about this thing called Landmark, right? And if you know anything about Landmark, for the people that are listening, it's like a personal development, self-help course. And there's many courses within Landmark. I just did the Landmark Forum. And there's a couple of things that I learned, but I'll just share one. So I was in a room or a class with about 100 people. And it was about, I think we did 12 to 14 hours a day over 3 days. And I remember part of the exercise is you had to, it wasn't for everybody. You can get up voluntarily and share what your issue or challenge was. And I remember this young lady, probably in her mid to late 30s, got up and she shared how in her past failed marriage, she was sexually assaulted by her husband. And that is now impacting the intimacy in her new marriage. And I remember one of the things that the instructor said, and I'm going somewhere with this, Tiff. I see that look on your face. Boy, where are you going with this? I remember the instructor said, it's very unfortunate what happened to you, and no one can ever change the past. But the story you're telling yourself is doing either one or two things. It's either empowering you or disempowering you. That choice is up to you. And so when I got up there and I was, bold enough to kind of share my story, he said, well, Corey, 80% of this room is what you have a fear of, and you're doing it right now. And I don't know, just me doing that one little exercise made that kind of block I had kind of dissipate, if you will. So that was like one. You talked about incremental steps. That was an incremental step I took. So I went to this Landmark Forum. I did the exercise. So that was another step. And then after I did that, when I went back to work, I had no real fear of talking to really successful Caucasian people. I don't even know where it came from. Probably another session from my therapist to dig into. But I share that because we all have these certain things, these stories that we play in our mind. And the question that I like to ask myself now that I've done that course is, hey, I'll even talk to myself and say, hey, Corey, is this empowering you right now? Or is this, taking away from you right now?
Man, that was great. I went through the same thing. And thank you for sharing that, by the way. Thank you for being vulnerable with us. I acknowledge you for your vulnerability.
Thank you.
So I went through the same thing, something called, it's similar to Landmark, but it's called Mastery and Transformational Training.
Okay.
And it's exactly what you just, discussed and talked about. It is a self-help training where they're not really telling you how to be, but you get to learn certain things about yourself that become exposed through these different experiences, like going up to speak in front of the audience, or, doing dyads, which are like one-on-ones, or being in a small group and stuff like that. And so the big shift for me was not a conversation, but it was an experience that I had as well. And the experience that I had was actually around this time last year. So it's been exactly a year this week, this upcoming week. But the shift that I had was that I learned that everything that I had done up until that point was due to a vision that was put on me. not necessarily for the vision that I have for myself.
Mm.
And so I learned that about myself. And then it was the first time in my life I ever felt like, wow, I didn't have any plans. And I got to just be and be present and learn what were the actual plans that I wanted for myself, how I wanted to show up in the world in alignment with my gifts and my strengths. And so I sat with that. And that's when that big shift happened for me. I did a meditation. I wrote down 4 things. I wrote down financial advisor, coaching, public speaking, and life insurance. Because I knew the following things that were important to me, but not just important to me, but in alignment with the mission and the vision that I have for this world and our community.
Wow. I love that.
That was my big shift.
Guys, can you see what I have on the podcast now? Those listening. So good. All right, let's talk about LegacyCon for a second here. Now, you emphasize the importance of creating generational wealth. So, why is generational wealth important to you, Tiffani? And why should it be important to the Black community?
Okay. So LegacyCon is for the people, by the people. It's the first financial literacy conference ever. I'm born and raised in LA, and I know ain't nothing out there like LegacyCon. The first financial literacy conference in Southern California, in Los Angeles, to be specific, for the people and by the people. We, as a community, not just the Black, but also the poor whites, the Latinos, the Asian Americans, in LA, we're all the underserved. And so there is a lack of information being given and shared throughout and between all 4 of those communities. So I grew up starting in Watts. Watts is like, you hear about Compton in LA, but Watts is also the other part of it, quote unquote, get up. So my family grew up in Watts. And then eventually we moved to Downey, which is it was more of a suburbs at the time when I was younger. But I got to see the disparity between the 2 communities, the differences, and then also how my parents didn't have retirement set up. And if my parents didn't have it, most of the other parents of my friends, whether they were Latino, Black, or whatever, they didn't have retirement set up. Nobody talked about finances growing up. And so I asked myself, how do we facilitate change or transformation for my family, for myself, so that I'm not repeating this cycle? Because I want to be wealthy. I don't want to be on the struggle bus.
I hear you.
So how do we facilitate the change? And it starts with information. Because this is why people that win the lottery find themselves back in the same place a year to 3 years after, because they got the money, but the philosophy didn't change, their mindset didn't change, the information that they knew didn't change. So creating the foundation for information, number 1, is what LegacyCon is all about. And it's for the people, by the people. And it's opening up that conversation to talk about finances and well-being. And then how we can accumulate wealth for ourselves and for our community. And if you're not thinking about that, my question to you would be why? In that, now it's not okay to be selfish. Because if you're not thinking about the why, you are being selfish in a negative way.
I get you.
You're being selfish in a negative way. So I definitely think it's extremely important. And I believe that many people will agree with me.
I love that. So when's the next LegacyCon? When's that happening?
So
and
the next one,
happening?
Absolutely. So, okay. So the where is actually going to be in a different state. I haven't announced it yet.
Okay. I'll let you know.
Although we started it in LA, it's still going to be back in LA sometime soon, but this is a worldwide footprint. So it's going to be in a different state. However, the date is that it is going to be on Black Friday in November. This year.
I like that. That's smart. You so smart. I like that. Question for you. InvestFest, have you been?
I've been to InvestFest, yes.
Got you. Okay. Because I'll be like, that's perfect playing grounds for you if you haven't been. Awesome. I've been to several other events. They've been up here more than a few times. I've met Troy and Rashad and Ian. personally.
I'll be going again this August.
You're going again this August?
I will be.
Yeah, well, if you're having an event coming up Black Friday, that would just make a lot of sense for you to be there. So I'm just saying. Are you gonna have a booth or anything, or are you just gonna be there just in attendance?
No, I will be there creating relationships.
I love that. Love it.
Yes.
Work in the hallways, y'all. That's where the money's at.
That's where it's at.
Okay. Let's make a hard pivot here. Okay. Let's talk about finances and relationships.
Let's talk about it.
How important is it to know your partner's financial situation, and what are the details you should know before taking that next step, whether that's engagement, moving in, or actually walking down the aisle?
I'm about to hit y'all with this 1-2.
Woo, come with it, please.
If you don't understand, like, just going back to the philosophy, if you know what a person's finances are and what their financial standpoint is, that will tell you a lot about them automatically. If they have bad credit, if they have good credit or excellent credit, if they're in the process of fixing it or if they're not. Like, you get where I'm going here? How much money are they accumulating per month? Do they think higher of themselves? Especially for someone like me, like, I'm going places. Like, I am where I am now, but I will continue to grow. And in addition to that, my bank account will continue to grow. So I need to also understand and know if my partner also thinks of himself in that way. Can we grow together, or does he see himself as staying in the same place forever? I need to know that. And it's not something I'm going to bust out with on the first date, but eventually I'm going to ask that question.
Okay, so it's not the first date, and I know it's nuanced, right? Because time is relative based on the situation with the person. But like, if you had to give me a number, what date are we talking about? Where you're, how many months into this dating situation are you asking that question?
No, not months. Not months. That's too long. I would say between dates 2 to 4. Because I date with the intention of marriage. So I date to marry.
Gotcha.
And if I'm out here rocking with seriousness, I can't be wasting my time. So I can't learn about this stuff on date 5, 6. You just hit me with a left hook. And now I'm like, okay, this is definitely going to possibly affect our relationship. Because now you're sharing things with me that it would have been great to know in the beginning. So yes, I would say between dates 2 to 4. Okay,
so what are like, give me like 2 to 3 questions that Tiffani would ask to kind of assess one's financial situationship.
How's your credit?
So I say, so let's role play here. I say, it's 620.
Okay, that's pretty good. Do you think that's good or do you think that's bad?
No, I think I'm on the come up. I had a bad situation. I used to date a girl. I had all the bills in my name. When we moved out, I allowed her to, keep the bills in my name, and then she just didn't pay it. And then I was taken to collections. So I've been working on it ever since. That's my story.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds to me like you definitely love to be in that provider role, I would assume. Yeah. You just got taken advantage of.
I did.
Okay. So what are you doing? What are some of the ways that you, how are you, improving your score if you think that's kind of like, okay?
Well, I'm paying all my bills on time. I'm in the process of making more money. I'm up for a promotion, so I want to get more money. I invest in my personal development, so it's just a matter of time.
Okay, boom, pause. So right there, you've already told me that you are a committed person. You told me that you are responsible. You have also shared with me just in that 30 seconds that you have a vision. So I'm not going to knock you off the list.
Got you. Okay, so I passed level 1. Okay, got some points. Okay, what's the second?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you what the second question, but you have more to add, so go ahead.
The last thing I'm going to add is just also you said that you are working on getting a promotion. So for me, it doesn't matter how much money you're making at this point right now because you see yourself continuing to grow.
Right. Okay. So what's question number 2?
Okay, so I asked about your credit. I think question number 2 would be to just simply ask what you do for work and do you see yourself there forever?
Okay. Got you. So if I said I'm going to choose a controversial one that was floating around the internet about a year ago from our friend Ebony K. Williams, I'm a bus driver. The silence. I'm a bus driver. I work when you're in Atlanta. I drive a bus for the city of Atlanta. That is what I do.
Okay, so you drive the MARTA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. How long have you been doing that for?
I'm going into my 10th year.
Your 10th year. Okay, awesome. You want to retire there?
I mean, they got a great pension. I get full benefits. It's a good job.
Okay, pause. Now it's a no for me. It wasn't the fact that you're a bus driver, but because of your comfortability. Because of your comfortability. Talk about the pension, which being a financial person, I know that not all pension plans are great, but it's the mentality for me. Like you're looking forward to that pension, you're looking forward to retiring with the MARTA, and I would say it's limited. It's a limited frame of mind for me.
Right. So it's not necessarily about the profession. It's just more that I'm comfortable, and it doesn't seem like I'm interested in growing beyond that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So like if I wanted to invest in property, am I going to be able to be in partnership with you to do so? If I have this grand vision, are you a limited thinker or are you expansive in your mindset and your thinking? So.
I love it. I dig it. Okay. Is there a third question, or are those the big two?
I think those are the big two because even with just asking those two questions opens up a lot in the conversation and getting to know someone.
Gotcha. And she said by the 5th date, by date number 5, this is coming out. What's your credit score? Get ready. Okay. Now, the list. So, guys, let me give you some context. So, myself, my mindset coach, Rich, and Brendan, the podcast god, as I call him, or podcast king, and Tiffani, we went out for dinner one night in Atlanta at Pasha, I think it's called, the hookah lounge. And we somehow came across the topic on the list as in, what are the qualities, characteristics, things that you look for in your ideal partner, mate, etc. So when it got to Tiffani, she gave a very interesting take. I have never heard such a detailed, well-described, well-thought out list in my entire life. And I'm 39 years old. Okay. So, Tiffani, I would love, if you're comfortable, of course, to share how you to share your list, how you broke it down, because how you broke it down was the most interesting part for me too. Yeah,
absolutely. I got y'all. Ladies and gentlemen, take heed to this. So this is a very intentional list, and if you're serious about what you want out of a relationship, you get to be intentional. So my list. Should I go through the list first and then have them kind of think and identify what they didn't hear, or should I say what's not on there first?
I think you should go through the list first.
Okay, all right. I'm not even going to categorize it. So,
but I think the category is what made it special for me. That's what made it memorable for me, because I'm like, I've heard lists before, but you had it. Like, I felt like if we were looking at like a document, it would be color coded. You strike me as that type of person. See,
absolutely.
I'm right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the category is important. Secret sauce.
Okay, intentional and categorical. So needs in my husband. These are non-negotiables. Now we can work with them a little bit, but mental, category number 1, mental. He is into personal development, reads books, visits conferences, always learning and thirsty for knowledge. He is peaceful. He is wise. That concludes the mental. Physical health, internal and external health discipline. Exercises at least 4 times a week, can pick me up with 2 hands, dental and physical hygiene, desires a family. Spiritual, reads the Quran and or Bible, open to my faith and to learning, if not already, without judgment, and in tune with the understanding and being of God consciousness. Emotional, emotionally intelligent, sound, has unlocked or is in the process of unlocking his keys to live a higher life and frequency, listens to me and listens to understand, resolves my anxious emotions and realigns with me when I get off track. Unconditional love from the heart, kind, generous, is of service to others with a full cup and knows that service to himself first is as important. Provides space for me to feel emotionally safe. Financial, provides for the both of us without stress, worry, or anxiety, or has the ability to provide for the both of us. Let's be clear, without stress, worry, or anxiety.
I feel like that's an iteration based on what we were talking about.
Has the ability to provide for the both of us without stress, worry, or anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's included, but not limited to, living expenses, trips, self-care, maintenance, dates. Good or excellent credit. Okay. Good or excellent credit. Has active savings accounts and or cash flowing investments. I'm complete.
Wow. I love it. I love it. I was blown away. I was blown away by both, not the length of it. I think it's a reasonable list, but I've never heard it so descriptive, so well thought out. It obviously felt like you put a lot of thought into it, which I'm assuming you did over the course of your years. So what do you say to someone that says, Tiffani, I hear you, girl, but that's like a laundry list. What do you think the odds are that you're going to find a man that meets all of that? How do you respond to that?
First things first, he ain't for me. He ain't the one. Because there's 8 billion people in this world. But the second thing is that my list really holds a lot of intrinsic value. I didn't talk about what he looked like. I didn't talk about his height. I didn't talk about how much money he had in the bank account. Because, for example, my dad has been in the industry of truck driving all my life, and even before I was born. And my dad he can be and is a provider. He holds great intrinsical values, but he's not, at least during the first part of my life, he is now, but during the first part of my life, he was not a 6-figure earner, but he was the best father ever. And so for me to like judge and say like, oh, somebody's a bus driver, or, I don't exercise. I only exercise twice a week. Like that's too much. Then sorry.
I have to ask though, where did you get 4 from? 4 days a week. Where does that number come from? Or is it just, you feel like it's a healthy number?
4, it's intentional. It's intentional.
Okay.
So there's 7 days in a week. 4 is the greater number. If you're exercising 3 days in a week and 4 days being lazy.
Okay. There's logic behind it. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. Okay, I just want.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to see like. It doesn't mean you have to be in the gym 4 days a week. I didn't say that you have to be in the gym. I just said exercise. You could be going on walks. You could be doing yoga or, I don't know, stretching, something that involves body movement of the body. So
right,
it's intentional.
So there's a book out, and let me ask you this. Let me define this. Are you, because you're very intentional about your dating practices, so does it matter to you what community he belongs to in terms of his ethnic background, Black, white, Asian?
I would say no. And the reason being is because before I came up with this list, I used to hear the list of other women, oh, tall, dark, handsome, 6 figures, whatever. And I would think to myself, what if God was sending you a great man, but he didn't look like that? If he didn't fit the laundry list of specifications that you had on your list, you would miss your blessing.
Ooh,
so I thought to myself, I said, forget what he looks like, or this perfect everybody has a perfect ideal image, right? But
Mhm.
if I just take away the perfection and really just thought about the actual values of the man, he could come in any shape, size, form, color.
Mm.
So I have to be open to that and open to receiving in order to actually seeing my blessing when it comes.
Mm.
Otherwise, I'm walking around with these blinders on, specifically focused on a specific list. Whole time, my husband's probably standing right next to me, but I can't see him, or I'm not
Right.
even open to receiving him. I'm not available.
So, based on that line of logic, do you think your potential husband could be an Uber driver? Do you think you can meet him as an Uber driver? Let's just say that's just the stage he's in right now, but he's got all the sauce.
Mhm.
That's
It's
possible.
possible. It's possible because what if he was driving for fun?
Mm.
What if, just what if?
Mm.
In my world, everything is 100% possible 100% of the time. And that's with all things. I could have
Yeah.
met him in the grocery store and he could have been looking like so busted, but that's probably not how he is all the time. Or, he could be doing something super amazing for work. I don't know until I actually get to know him. So I have to be open to receiving in order to then apply discernment in like, okay, this person is for me or is not for me.
Right. So I love that. I love that perspective, but I want to challenge a little bit of it because often I don't want to make you as in the community, like you represent, women in the community, but often you hear a lot of women that are of a certain ilk like yourself, they don't want to work with potential anymore. They kind of want to work with, I don't want to say completed because then who's ever really completed? I always feel like we're always in this constant state of evolving, but you get what I'm saying, right? So are you saying that you're open to working with Mr. on the come up? Is that what you're saying? You're
Yes. However, he can't be
Mhm.
like I told you guys this at dinner. It's the same thing with both
Mhm.
a woman and a man. If I have to build you up, then we're not in a partnership.
Mm.
So we may not be at the same level financially, but we could still be partners in a sense where we're building each other up, or you're building yourself up, I'm building myself up.
Right.
But if you are a project, I refuse. So there's a difference between potential and working on something and being active in that
Right.
versus an actual project.
Right. Got it. Okay. So let's take the scenario where, because you just brought this up in your example, if you're making more money than him, let's take the scenario where you make, let's say, $500,000 a year and he makes 70. Is that a deal breaker? Is that it?
To me, the question would be, does he check off the list?
Let's say he checked off almost 90% of your boxes, but the financial part, he only made $70,000 a year.
That can be fixed. So yes,
Mm.
yes, that can be fixed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. All right. All right. Guys, I by the way, I love your list, by the way. And I just thought it'd be awesome if you shared it.
Thank you.
So
Well,
thank
let
you
me
for
ask you,
yeah,
what
go
do
ahead.
you love most about the list?
So what I liked about it was two things. You categorized it and it was intrinsic for the most part, right? You talked about habits and mindset more so than he has to have a big house. He has to drive a nice car. He has to make, you said, when you refer to money, has enough money to make sure that we're comfortable. Comfortable is in the eye of, it depends on each person, right? So there's nuance to your list. I find that sometimes when you hear these list conversations, it's like these very hard faceted things. And I feel like women and men who pigeonhole themselves to these hard facet things, and everyone should have their preferences. I'm not knocking it, but you have to realize that if you do it based on a lot of physical characteristics, you shrink your percentage down to a very, 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 very small percentage. You then got to ask yourself, what is the likelihood of that happening? One. Number two, am I also asking, am I also worthy of what I'm asking? Like, are you in that same bucket of what you're asking for? So that's kind of my take on that.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. And you're right. You're absolutely right.
Okay. So Tiffani, lastly, to the person who is down and out financially, struggling, more month than money, broke, busted, disgusted, however you want to phrase that. If you could only give them one piece of advice, just one, what would that be?
It might sound cliche, but don't give up. Know that your situation is only temporary. And as long as you focus on your habits and your mindset, you can really come out of any and every situation. Absolutely. So it's not the end all be all. Don't give up.
I love it. It's never over until it's over. So Tiffani, this is actually where we get into the 3 questions part, by the way. This is a rapid fire questions. This is where I ask you 3 questions off the top of my mind, and you got to give me the first thought that comes to your mind in 5 seconds or less. Are you ready for the challenge?
Okay. Do I give my answer in one word or?
One word, one sentence, just first thought that comes to your mind.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Is it better to pay off my credit card bill in full every month or leave a reasonable balance?
Full.
Okay. What was one thing you were once afraid of or very uncomfortable with, but are no longer anymore?
Sharing my opinion.
What is a book? What is a book that changed your life, or a quote or mantra that you currently live by?
The Slight Edge and also Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Those are 2 books.
Slight Edge and the Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. I love it. I love it. I love it. So Tiffani, for all my listeners, for my audience, the people that are going to be seeing this on social, if they want to work with you, collaborate with you, attend the conference that's coming up on Black Friday, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So the best way would be you could either send me a DM on Instagram at Tiffani Herron, Tiffani with an I. And the second way would be you could send me an email to my team and I at tiffani@tiffaniherron.com.
Amazing. And guys, as many of you know that listen to each episode, you know that I like to end our conversations by saying this. Sometimes you don't need to hear or see anything new. You just need to either hear or see that somebody else went through it too. So with that being said, Tiffani and I are out. Peace and love. Until the next time.
Bye.
Clockwise, clockwise, clockwise.